All right, y'all, we are back. Welcome. It's another month once again. This is the Python Community News live chat. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Jay, and with me,
I'm John.
John. It's weird. It's been a while. It's been since before PyCon. Actually, we tried to do a thing, and my internet said no. Uh, so it feels. How's it feel to be back on the stream?
Oh, it feels good. I'm glad to be streaming live again, and I am glad that folks have been enjoying the videos you did while you were at PyCon in person there.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about that a little bit. When we had a nice uptick in subscribers since then. For those that don't know, I went to PyCon US. John was there virtually, and while we were there, I was able to interview a few folks from different perspectives. We have people who it was their first time attending PyCon. Some say it was like their 15th time at PyCon, and workshop presenters, authors, people giving tutorials, and people who are just trying to soak it all in. And all of those are on the YouTube channel. If you're watching this on Twitch, then it's at youtube.com/at Pi Community News. And it was an absolute blast having all those conversations. And thank you again for everyone that checked it out. And I hope you stay tuned because we're probably going to have some more videos in the future. Can't spoil anything, but I know we're planning a couple of things. But yeah, this month we're not really trying to play catch up because unfortunately it is the busiest time for us. So things that happened in May have come and gone, but there are a few things that we wanted to talk about, and probably the biggest one being that it's PSF board election time. So we're going to get to that, but first we want to talk about an opportunity for folks who might be interested in learning or about working for the PSF. John, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the Python Software Foundation is hiring a community events coordinator. So we're gonna share a link to this, but this is there's a lot here in the job post, really detailed. So definitely check that out. But if you are interested in working for the PSF on events, this is definitely something to check out. It is a remote role based in the U.S. And so I'll leave most of the rest of the details for anybody that wants to go and take a look at the full post there.
Yeah, and I put the link in the comments. It's kind of a long link, so probably not the easiest thing to throw up on the screen. Probably could have did a short link for that or something, but yeah, I think that it's really cool. I know, John, just with your community, with the conference chats community that you've been putting on for a few years now, we've seen people who, as volunteers, or at least most of them as volunteers, do a lot of this work already. And I know that that's always like one of the things that people love to do when they want to get involved with the Python community is like, oh, hey, I want to help, organize conferences, or I want to participate in, the next PyCon. And in fact, that's one of the things that I did this year was I helped set up some of the booths at PyCon, not just my own, but the PSF community booth. And there's a picture of me almost passing out from trying to inflate one of those heavy balloons. So you can go find that on Twitter somewhere. But I think it's really cool, especially for people who are in a position to where they can focus on this full time. And we talk with some of those people that do work on it full time for the PSF, and they seem to get a lot out of it. So I would highly encourage anybody who is interested in maybe going down that road in their career, or they just want to take a year or two to give to the PSF and hosting PyCon and not just PyCon, other events. So this isn't this you're going to be working on PyCon, but you're also helping with other events and you're helping staff and volunteers and others as well.
But yeah, there's a ton of detail in the post for anybody who's interested. I know that they are the job posting is open right now, and so the PSF is a great group of people.
Yeah. Do we know when the deadline is to submit this? Trying to see. I don't see it on the page. I would say submit it as soon as possible, but I can't remember how long this will be open. Um, but also check out the PSF blog as well because I think they'll have reminders for it as well. I think they just wrapped up the security hiring role recently. I think that was earlier this week.
I know they put out a sort of like last call for applicants. I don't know if it's closed yet, but yeah,
Yeah.
PSF is hiring. There are some folks doing good work, and if you want to be a part of that, definitely check out this post and other posts on the PSF website. Jeff Triplett from chat just told us it is open through June 30th, 2023. So
Yeah. That said,
have
don't
time, but not a lot of time.
this isn't a conference CFP. Do not wait. There will probably not be extensions. Like, don't wait for those either. But make sure you get it in now. That way, you can begin thinking about how you would serve in that role. So speaking of Jeff Triplett, who is in the chat, Jeff, thank you for hanging out with us. It is PSF board election time, and one of the things that I noticed was that Jeff is at the end of their current term. So Jeff's seat, which is a massive seat to fill, as well as some other big names here. I see Dustin Ingram, Nina Zakarenko, Thomas Wouters, big names. However, they have served the PSF and served them well, and now it is time for the next batch, which means it's PSF board election time, and we do have a little bit of a timeline. Nominations for board directors nominations, I guess, opened yesterday. We're going to have those open for a couple of weeks. Once that cutoff date happens, that's also the same cutoff time for people to be to make themselves known that they intend to vote. And we're going to talk about how to do that in just a second. But once they do that, they'll announce the candidates a few days later, and then voting will take place for about 10 days. And they will ultimately select, and I don't remember what the actual voting strategy is, but I do believe it is you select, I think it's like a certain number of people, and then they do ranked choice voting to kind of figure out who wins, or not ranked choice voting, but it's some
Yeah, in the past, it's been approval voting.
Yeah.
The email that goes out that explains, the practical steps to vote, I'm sure will include all the information you need in order to actually make your selections there.
Yeah, and with that, we talked about that whole. Let's skip the should I run for the board for now, and go with the thing that most of the people will be doing, which is voting. John, I know that when we first started this show, one of the things that we talked about was the amount of responsibility that the board has versus the number of people that they ultimately represent versus the number of people that select them. Can you kind of refresh us on what that looks like in many ways traditionally?
Yeah, I mean the Python Software Foundation does a bunch of things, um, some of which are around protecting uh, the trademark and brand identity of Python. A very notable one is um, operating PyCon US. They also provide grants to community events, various open source projects. They serve as a fiscal sponsoree for a bunch of community events and open source projects. Um, sorry, fiscal sponsor um, for all those those meetups and conferences and projects, so that organizers and maintainers don't have to take on the overhead of handling those sorts of like donations and things.
Yeah.
Um, so if you're looking at kind of like some numbers, the PSF board is a pretty small number of people. Um, right? If you look at something like PyCon US, that's a bigger conference than many of the folks attending Python conferences are going to, right? I believe last PyCon US there was ballpark 24 to 2,500 people in person,
Yeah.
plus another 800 some odd attendees online, and so that's a much larger group, right? And these are all people who are generally pretty invested in the Python community uh, and the language and all of the various communities and projects that right encircle it.
Mhm.
Um, but then beyond that, Python is one of the most popular programming languages in the world, right? And so um, the sorts of things that happen um, right, at each tier of that affect a lot more than just uh, just the people in the room, um, right? Anything you do day to day with Python comes from the efforts of many people over many years, and
Yeah.
so the board is one way that people can contribute back uh, to the Python community, um, and it's an important one.
Yeah. I also think that when we talk about like some of the primary responsibilities of the PSF as an organization, which I'd love to sit down with some of the leadership team there and talk about not just what the PSF does, slash doesn't do, um, as a whole, because I think there might be some confusion around there, but also kind of how that has evolved over the last few years. I mean, we've seen, hired roles, like the one we just promoted. We, I think they announced uh, at PyCon US this year that, they went from the number of paid roles from the PSF on behalf of the Python community. Uh, I think it went from like three or four to like six or seven now.
Yeah,
Um,
and I neglected in that list there to mention PyPI, which is uh,
yeah,
most people's primary way of installing anything third party for Python.
yeah.
And so there's a huge amount of responsibility involved in maintaining a resource like that.
And even a few packages, like a few popular packages, have kind of become under the responsibility of the PSF now, just over time. And again, when we talk about the board, isn't necessarily doing a lot of those smaller things, but they're overseeing a lot of that work. They're also helping to determine events that are not PyCon US. They're responsible for a lot of grants. A lot of money gets allocated to conferences all over the world, not just conferences, but some meetup groups, PyLadies events, a lot of these things, even if they're not directly funded in totality by the PSF, there is a lot of negotiating that takes place. And John, I mean, you're very aware of this, of like putting on a conference takes more than a bunch of volunteers getting into a venue that they somehow managed to like find a way into. They didn't like pick the locks, they had to sign contracts, they had to sign like deals, and not every conference can afford lawyers, or a lawyer. So there's a lot of these responsibilities that are ultimately overseen by a few volunteers. And what the PSF has kind of done recently is work to really distribute the diversity in many levels of the organization to kind of have as many of the best interests of the Python community at heart. We've seen better representation globally. We've seen better, gender breakdowns, and of course, there are things that we can always continue to improve on. But a lot of this has kind of transpired into there are more and more people running for these positions. The sad thing is the number of people voting doesn't go up that much. So I want to put on my best P Diddy impression and say, yo, get out there and vote, rock the vote, like do all the things that involve making sure that if you have a concern that you feel hasn't that might be neglected, like it's not out of spite, it's not out of malice or anything negative. It's often there probably just weren't enough people voting for people who wanted to support that thing, and things get left out. So if you have concerns, if you have things that you feel like are being disregarded, and you don't feel like you're in a position to run for the board, the best thing that you can do is make sure that you have set yourself up to be able to vote so that you can vote for people who are thinking and wanting to act directly on those things.
Yeah, and I think there are a few different ways that that people can become eligible to vote. But I want to mention there were numbers from prior years elections. There's been steady growth of number of voters, but certainly I think the uh, popularity of Python maybe has outpaced uh, the number of voting members.
Yeah.
It's a subjective thing there, but yeah. So there are a few different ways that someone can become eligible to vote in these elections. Jay, did you want to dive into that, or are we looking at
Yeah.
timeline still?
Yeah, let's talk about the first way that you can qualify to vote, which is becoming a supporting member here. And of course, like I said, I'm putting links to everything in the chat. This one's actually a small one. I'm happy to share it on the screen. There you go. PSFmember.org. The first thing is you need to be a PSF member. I believe that becoming a basic member of the PSF is absolutely free. That said, basic members unfortunately do not have the ability to vote in these, so you have to be either a supporting, a contributing, or a sustaining. Is that the other one? A fellow, yeah, or a fellow. And but this is the easiest way to be able to vote. It is a financial donation. It is $99, and that gives you the ability to vote for the next 12 months. That has changed a little bit. If you are in a situation where paying the $100 doesn't make financial sense for you, they do have a sliding scale membership that you can also uh, select, which unfortunately I don't have a link for. John, if you have that link, I can throw that up on the screen as well. But the sliding scale membership starts at $20, and you can pay what you want, moving up the ladder up to 100, and you can even set it up to be a recurring annual donation. So again,
25. Sorry.
is it 25? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, $25 for the sliding scale. And for that, it is I loved when they announced this. I'm happy to see that they also were given the ability to become voting members. That was something that we verified earlier today. The PSF did tell us, like, yes, if you are a member through the sliding scale, you do have the ability to vote. So yes, this is a way that if $100 doesn't make a lot of sense, if you're unemployed, if you're a student, um, if you're in a country that has lower average incomes than the US or Western Europe, feel free to go this way. And like, again, we don't care how you are a voting member. If you are a voting member, please go vote. So whatever you have to do to become a voting member. But there is another way that is free. However, I think at the moment, I mean, I guess you could go volunteer at a few user groups
What's
over the next
what's
couple
the
of weeks.
open source term? Free as in puppy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um,
So that is the managing and contributing membership self certification, and this is reserved for folks who are active in the community, who are, putting in the time to continue to develop the Python community, whether it is, and again, the link is in the chat. It's kind of a Google Docs form link, so doesn't really help putting it up on the screen. Um, but the these are for folks who are active in their user groups. Maybe you're an organizer of a user group, or even, I believe, even a digital user group. There are a lot of Discord servers that help advocate for the Python community, help provide training, help provide, knowledge sharing, resources. Um, all of those people. It's 5 hours a month minimum. So if you spend 5 hours contributing back to the Python community, you qualify. And I believe that these are self certifications. So if you aren't absolutely sure, then the easiest way is to go in here, self certify. I believe someone reviews these. Um, and at that point, if they go, well, that isn't really what we're looking for, or that doesn't really count, or whatever, they will tell you. Let them tell you. Don't disqualify yourself. Let someone else that is responsible for managing that tell you that. Like I said, I would rather 15,000 people who aren't qualified register and get the sad rejection than to have those same 15,000 who do qualify not think that they do and not vote. So, and John, thank you for providing a much a much more appealing link, which is this screen here, which is the membership FAQ. What does it mean to be a member? What are your responsibilities as a member? What do you you know what do you get out of being a member? Um, and ultimately, like you said, the managing tiers. There is also fellows. I believe if you're a PSF fellow, you probably know a lot of this. PSF fellows are often designated to vote, or designated for their roles, and they are appointed. So it's not a that you would know if you're a fellow. And yes, if you are a fellow, you are allowed to vote. Um, so yeah, now that we've talked about the like who should go and vote, which is a lot of people, um, now is kind of the interesting part, because we're in that part of the clock of the schedule where nominations are open. And John, do we know anybody that's running for the board?
I'm sure we know plenty of people, but I think you are leading me to say I'm going to be running for the board this year.
Yes.
Um, but that said, all the stuff that we're going to talk about today, I'm not talking about my specific uh, goals in board membership. But I think we are going to talk a little bit about, broadly speaking, uh, why one might run for a board like this.
Yes. And I also wanted to throw out there, yes, John is running. I'm sure I will get John's position, stump speech, like all of those things out of him eventually. But I also want to open the floor to other people who want to run. You are also invited to come on to the show. And if it's not, it won't be a live show, because I don't think we have any more live shows between now and then, but we are posting this channel as a place where people who are running, if you want more people to understand why you're running, what you hope to accomplish if you are elected, let us know. Reach out to us. You can reach out to us on YouTube in the comments. You can also reach us on Twitter at Pi Community News. I think you can also email us at, I think it's
hello at pythoncommunitynews.com. Yeah.
Exactly. And we would love to, again, help get your message out as far as possible so people can make educated voting decisions. As someone who, and we can remove the screen share here, as someone who has ran in the past, I'm choosing not to run this year, but has had some concerns about the overall voting situation. And we also have some people in the chat saying just like vote. I think Sarah and Kojo both just shouting vote. All the things you can do, vote. It's often hard not to vote for people that you recognize for doing an excellent job. That being said, what are some of the excellent jobs required for someone who is a PSF board member? Unfortunately, neither one of us have been in that position of board member before. So a lot of what we're saying is what we believe are valid reasons why maybe you would be a good candidate. But I will say, if you are thinking about running, that is a good first step. I often have to be reminded by folks that, like, if you are thinking about the thing that is hard and you're like, I don't know if I qualify to do that, the fact that you are thinking about it is kind of a good step. The other thing is, remember, this is a commitment. There are regular board meetings. One of the reasons I elected not to run this year was I have a lot of stuff with my family happening this year. This is a very busy year for me. I don't know if I can commit to attending all of those meetings. So I have said I will contribute to the community in other ways. But if you do feel like you have the space that you can attend, these are monthly meetings, I believe, John.
I know it's either monthly or bi-monthly, but I don't want to speak out of turn there.
Yeah. We do have, we have a lot of PSF members. We have some PSF staff and board members in the chat correcting us as we go along. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. Yes, not only vote, but nominate yourself or someone you know that you think is a good fit for the board as well. Yeah, so these are monthly, or they're monthly meetings. Says E. Hi E, welcome to stream. These are monthly meetings. Make sure that you can attend these monthly meetings. Make sure that if you work for an employer, your employer knows that this is a responsibility, and that you will need to fulfill the roles of this responsibility. I think the other side of that, as we have more members, again, next time we're just going to invite John to the show to do this for us. The board meets for about 2 hours. There are also work groups and committees that you would be expected to join as well. So yeah, you're looking at an overall commitment of about 3 to 4 hours a month. I think that most people can do that. As we saw with my internet connection last month, I can't even promise that. But there are so many active work groups and roles. Everything from trademark enforcement, proper logo usage, to helping with, things around, like, I believe there's like a PIPI work group as well, which I know PIPA is also its own thing. And then there are also things like the diversity and inclusion work group, who have done a lot of work to, bring awareness to certain diversity efforts that the Python community is taken a part of. There's also like a grants committee that approves conference budgets or conference allowances and grants and things like that. So there are so many roles in which you may just be really good at understanding that if there's $10 in 5 conferences, you're really good at doling out $2 to the right conferences, or $3 to 3 and 2 to the last few, and figuring that out. I am clearly not that person. So if maybe you have a skill set that you think would benefit the community, and I think ultimately, again, the care and the want to contribute is really a big deal. But again, just make sure that you're able to commit to that commitment that you're making of a few hours a month.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the end of what you said there is particularly prescient. Right, the PSF's mission, and I'll read it off the screen here. It's to promote the Python. The Python Software Foundation's mission is to promote, protect, and advance the Python programming language, and support and facilitate the growth of the international community of Python programmers. Right, and your goal at the end of the day is to move that mission along. Right, that's what the board is meant to do, and there are a lot of things that are required that are, again, showing up for those commitments, and also, board level work is maybe different from what some folks are used to in their day to day work. If they are, say, working in Python, right, they might not be, uh, uh, you know, particularly familiar with doing things like reviewing grant applications, budgeting things for conferences that happen a few years from now. And so there are probably lots of questions people have about the Python Software Foundation, the board, what they do and what they don't do. Luckily, the PSF has a Slack that they mentioned in this blog post that you can join and ask. So if you have questions, and you are thinking about running for the PSF board, you should ask the PSF directly. Um, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Jay. A lot of the folks who are going to be running are doing this basically as I'm active in this community. I'm contributing already. I want to contribute at another tier.
Yeah. And Deborah mentions there's this other side of it too, of maybe you're really active in your local community and you want to see their voices heard. This is something that I ran for the last 2 years, and that was something that I was very adamant about, and I was like, I wanted to see active work in areas that I felt, not for any negative reason, just again, there's a lot of things that have to get thought about. So to have someone else thinking about this other space, I was very adamant about serving those communities. And at that point in time, I have since found other ways to continue that work. So it wasn't like I'm going to go do this thing, and if it doesn't work out, well, then I guess we have to forget about those. Um, it it became a level of like, I am going to do this work and I can represent these people at an even higher level and make sure that their voices are heard. So yeah, Deborah, that is a super a salient point. And there's, we talked about this idea of the different roles that are a part of the work, different working groups that you can join. Again, we talked about the D&I work group, talked about grants, some of the packaging and infrastructure stuff. I mean, there's stuff around marketing, around job board stuff. There's, again, the trademark outreach and education, public relations. I'm trying to find the stuff that's like, maybe you don't know much about. And again, some of these are inactive. Some of them are inactive because there isn't anyone there at the moment that has those skill sets. So maybe you want to see those brought back, and that's a thing that you can speak to and say, oh, I want to focus in this area, and take leadership or take the helm of this work group, or and maybe work with it. We do have some questions in the chat. We have a couple questions from 24 Hour Project. I'm hoping that someone that is a current PSF board member can answer. What time and time zone do they meet? That I'm not sure. I wonder if they wouldn't be. They would try to get a good flex and try to be as inclusive as possible on timing. Um, and then the other question that they had was, what perspectives are new members needing to get up to speed in the conversations? Which, and E has mentioned that meeting times vary to accommodate the global board. So, if I remember correctly, I think they have meetings at different times based on whatever the previous time was, as long as as many people as possible can attend. But I do like that question. What perspectives are new members needing to get up to speed? There's a reminder of this also from E, that these board terms are 3 years. No one is expecting you to come out on day one and be like, I got it, we're good. Just going right from the jump. I think the biggest perspective is, again, when you nominate to run, you are expected to kind of give why you're running. Or if you're nominating someone else, you are expected to explain why you're nominating them. And this is, to me, this is, I think, one of the coolest things ever, especially if you know someone that you think would be a good board member. I would encourage you to nominate them. They can always say no. In fact, they have to, I think, verbally say, or they have to commit to saying yes. You can't just nominate them and then congratulations, they won and they didn't know.
You should probably mention to them that you're nominating them for a 3-year, several hours per month commitment. But
What?
yeah, if you have friend, acquaintance, colleague who is interested and qualified to run for the board, you can nominate them, and those nominations will show up grouped with their self nomination if they do one. And so you'll see both. Here's why I think I am qualified for this board seat, and statements of support from the other people who have nominated that person.
Yeah. And I think that there is that beauty of, this is where you see the community not necessarily speaking on behalf of another person, but speaking up for other people. Around this time, especially once all the nominations have been laid out, you'll see some very visible faces in the Python community. They'll give their name and say, like, hey, I'm not telling you who to vote for, but I personally want to support these people. I've seen the work that they do. I see how they're active in the community. They would make good board members. And to me, I think this is really important. Mesrename, who runs PyLadies Ghana, I believe, has been working to increase engagement and excitement about running for the board in parts of Africa and parts of the PyLadies community in Africa. Iqbal, who is, I believe, he's on a couple of working groups, including the diversity inclusion work group, as well as Marlene Mangami. They have been very active in mentoring people and kind of helping them grow into not just PSF board members, but long-term community invested Pythonistas. So to me, I look for those people who have said, I've watched this person for several years. I've seen their involvement, and I'm excited that they feel like they now have the ability and space to serve on the board. They would make good candidates. Now, again, all of this to say that sometimes there is that feeling that most elections eventually devolve into a popularity contest. which is why we're hoping that we can help solve that some by saying, hey, we want to create an open platform where everybody has an opportunity to speak up and specify why they want to run and talk about some of the things that they have done in the past and talk about what they hope they can do if elected to the board. Um, Again, that being said, like, you got to talk to us. You got to tell us, otherwise we can't help you.
And
And go ahead,
and
John.
on that note, I want to mention. I think I said this to a bunch of people last year when not before the show existed, but on Twitter and various chat groups. Go read every nomination statement. I know there will probably be a lot. There were a lot of candidates last year. There will probably be more candidates this year. But read all of the statements. Even if you don't recognize somebody's name, doesn't mean they're not doing great work. And it doesn't mean that they're not very well qualified to run for a position like this. And additionally, right, serving on a board is not the only way you can contribute to Python communities around the world. Right, get involved in your local communities, your meetups, your conferences. Maintain projects. Create blogs, videos, tutorials, etc. about Python. All of these things, I'm kind of listing off a bunch of the ways one might become a managing or contributing member of the PSF. But these are all great ways that people are, contributing to the Python world day to day, and you can certainly, continue doing that regardless of running for the board or not.
Yeah, I don't think you would be disqualified if you don't meet the requirements of a contributing member. Um, However, I do think if you do meet those qualifications, I do believe that is a good baseline for, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, but I'm not sure if I am involved enough in the community. Like, if you qualify for that, then I think that's a good starting point. And again, that's not even a limiter. Maybe you just have a skill set that benefits serving on a board. Again, there are a lot of inactive work groups because they're just people that don't have the ability or the knowledge or skill sets to do certain things. So maybe you do have certain abilities that can help you serve in those ways. Um, John, I know we were talking a lot about the idea of supporting the PSF. Um, I think that it is also important to remember that the things that you're responsible for, we hinted at, it helps pay for conferences and things like that. It helps pay for PyPI. Um, a lot of this has direct connection to global outreach. Like PyCon's PyLadies auction, I believe was like $250,000, more than $250,000 was raised in a room. Some of that through selling, auctioning off a 15-cent Bic pen, which I thought was absolutely amazing. It was absolutely fun, and it was my first time at that auction. Someone had to put that on. Someone had to coordinate those things that happened. Someone had to volunteer and contribute to doing those things. These board seats are in many ways the starting point for doing a lot of fun little things. I had a lot of opportunities to talk to PSF employees and board members, and just thinking about all of the things that have to be thought about in this process can be somewhat daunting. I say this because I want people to take this position very seriously. It is a commitment. We talk about that 3 to 4 hours. 3 to 4 hours is a piece of that. They wanted to do a penny auction, but couldn't because they were in a state where that's classified as gambling, and like gambling is illegal. Like these are things that you have to be like on the ball thinking about. So you need to have a little bit of time dedicated to being willing to contribute, knowing that in many ways this is a nameless, like thankless, and sometimes like no one's getting a plaque. No one's getting a raise at their job, or at least they shouldn't be, in my opinion, because they were a board member. But the things that they're doing make such a big impact to people, often not even in the room, often not on those calls, often not the, the people who are little, out there like you and I, that get the minutes from each board meeting and we're like reading over it, trying to figure out like what's happening in the community. It benefits a lot of people who will not know your name, who will not know that you sat there and fought on their behalf. And you have to be okay with that. And again, I say this not because I think there's any abuse now. I say this because, again, this is a community that I advocate for, that I've been advocating for several years, that I love truly. Some, like, I'm going to weddings for people that I met because they showed me Python code. Like, these are some of my best friends, and you taking on a role of this board member means you are representing not just them, but you're representing me as well. So I highly would love it if people took this seriously.
All right, Jay, we are running pretty low on time, so I want to really quickly recap the time frame here. So we so we'll go through the time frame. Um, there are a bunch of links in chat already. We'll share those more broadly as well. And I think we'll probably end off on listing a couple of upcoming conferences.
Yeah.
So nominations are open right now. They opened yesterday, and they are open for another 13 days, roughly. So
At
June
time of
15th,
recording.
11:59 p.m. UTC. And if you are interested in running for the board or interested in nominating someone, that's your cutoff. Same deal for being able to vote. So if you are not already a voting member of the Python Software Foundation, which, like we said earlier, is supporting members, managing and contributing members, and fellows, you have until June 15th, 11:59 p.m. UTC to enroll. During that enrollment process, you'll get a question saying, basically, do you wish to vote in this upcoming election? Candidates get announced the next day, so all of those nominations will become public. You'll have a few days to read those, and then 10 days, June 20th to 30th, to actually go and make your votes. So there's a ton more to say about this. The PSF does a lot of stuff. Being on any board is, more different responsibilities than I think most people are accustomed to. So go to python.org, read about the PSF. Go to python.blogspot.com, read some more of these posts to see, what the board does, what the PSF does. There are also presentations at a lot of different Python conferences. PyCon US videos are now up on YouTube, so you can go check out those videos to see, updates from the board, updates from the PSF staff about news and events that are going on there. And anything to add before we jump into some upcoming conferences and calls for proposals?
No, I think we've definitely said all we can say on this. Well, said all that we have time to say on this without going over. Let's dive into upcoming conferences. John, you've been putting in some work. I I I see a Dataset project here. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So there's this cool resource that I tell people about a lot. That is a GitHub project called Python Organizers Conferences, or sorry, / conferences. Um, this is a combined effort from a bunch of people over a good number of years now, that aims to list out Python conferences around the world. I threw all these into a Dataset, which is a super cool project that you can find at dataset.io. That's SETTE. Um, I put all of these into a Dataset instance so that we could, pretty easily see what conferences are coming up and what CFP due dates are coming up as well.
Yeah, let's start with conferences, because I think at this point these conferences are coming up. The CFP dates have lapsed. So yeah, we have Pi Data London, Pi Day La Paz, and Bolivia, and then we also have PyCon Colombia and PyCon Poland. Those are all happening this month. Pi Data London has started. That was started today, and Pi Day La Paz starts tomorrow. So yeah, if you were in either those two places, or in Poland or in Bogota of Colombia, be sure to check those out. And then we've got a lot of CFPs. Do you want to fly through those really quick?
I don't know that we can fly through all of them,
Okay.
but uh, and I also do want to mention this is not an exhaustive list. There are definitely other Python conferences happening, but this is the list that I have contributed data to, and so if you know of an event that should be here and it isn't, there's a GitHub repo for it.
Yeah.
There's also a great Python events calendar and list of events that you can get to from www.pycon.org. But there are a bunch of calls for proposals coming up. So right now, I'll go through the ones that are within this calendar month, I guess. So Python Brazil, PyData Amsterdam, PyCon Hong Kong, Afro Python Conf, PyCon España, PyCon Portugal, and PyCon UK all have open calls for proposals, and their due dates are scattered throughout this month. So
Yeah.
you should definitely take a look at all of those if you
And
are in those regions or able to get to them.
And again, I put a link to the site in the chat, and I'll also throw a link to the GitHub repo. If you know of a conference that focuses on Python or the Python community in some way, be sure to add it here, so that more people can find out about it. And of course, the reminder that Python is a global event, so there are plenty of conferences happening worldwide that your Python talks could be accepted in. Also, a minor shout out to a couple of Discord communities as we wrap up. Um, John, you just hosted another conference chats, right?
Yeah, we had a good call this afternoon. So Conference Chats is a group of conference organizers, mostly volunteer community run events, where people talk about how they run events and help each other out with tips, tricks, advice, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and at PyCon, we actually, myself, along with a few other folks in the community, started the Black Python developers Discord as well. This is a space for Pythonistas who identify as Black from all over the world to get together, organize, hopefully, share resources, share knowledge. We've actually been kind of doing these ad hoc how to submit a CFP events. We say it is a space for folks who identify as Black, so that they can feel kind of the togetherness and community there. But if you or someone that you know might be interested in that, unfortunately, we don't have a URL for it yet. We're not that fancy, but reach out to me. I'm on Twitter. You can also go to my website, kjaymiller.com. I'm out everywhere that I am at kjaymiller, and just reach out to me and say, hey, I'm interested in joining. And we'd love to have you. John, I think that's gonna do it. Do we have anything else?
No, I think we'll provide more updates and videos as we have them, and we will probably have new new elected board members by the time our next live stream comes up.
Yes. So yeah, we can definitely end it with, as many people said, vote, 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 vote. When it's your turn, vote, vote, vote. Get out there and vote. Also, don't just vote, but nominate yourself or someone you know that might be a good candidate to run. And if you are running, I implore you to reach out to us, because we are hoping to provide a space for people who are running. We will try to reach out to as many people as we can once we know who has been nominated. But again, there are literally 4 days between the announcements of nominations and the election cycle. So it would be better if you reached out to us before we have to try and find everybody and schedule times and coordinate things. But you can do so. You can go to pythоncommunitynews.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at PyCommunityNews, or you can just hit us up in the comments on this video and again, we're at youtube.com/at PyCommunityNews as well for that. But that's going to wrap it up for this show. Missing anything, John? Nope. Okay. Well, I'm Jay.
I'm John.
And this has been the Python Community News.